It's a great example of 19th century history, family, architecture as well. It's a federal style building. Picture a big rectangle where everything is symmetrical and in brick. So wherever you have your central door, if you have 2 windows on the right, you have 2 windows on the left, and every single floor is going to follow suit. The initial structure is only 1 room deep from that central hallway. So the room that we're in right now, this was it for this side. And then of course it matched over on the other side. The families have deep connections to the Quaker roots here in Sandy Spring. Dr. William Palmer, a Quaker physician from just outside of Philadelphia, used his Quaker connections and came down here. He purchased the land and he built the manor house roughly of what we know it as today. So at first he was married to Martha Gray and they were both Quakers. By the late early 1800s, the Quakers made a full and faithful testament to not own enslaved people. However, Martha Gray, Dr. Palmer's first wife, died in 1825 due to childbirth complications. And 6 years later, he remarried Cleora Duval. Now, Cleora was not Quaker. She was Episcopalian. And when she came here to Woodlawn, through her dowry, she brought 1 enslaved person. And that population of enslaved people here at Woodlawn just continued to grow. Dr. Palmer probably had so many internal struggles of, do I continue to do something with the enslaved people that were here? Or do I continue to uphold my Quaker faith and not own enslaved people? And unfortunately, they continue to own enslaved people. We would never want to gloss over anything. We would never want to showcase something and not give the whole truth. The whole truth about here at Woodlawn is, yes, there were enslavers here, but there were enslaved people here. And we want to tell their story as well. We know 9 of their names. We know that there was actually a couple, Mary, Henry, and Nace. They had 4 kids, Mary, Henry, Nace, and Lucy. And then there was also John, George, and Allie. In 1835, Dr. Palmer was actually disowned from the Quaker meeting here in Sandy Spring. Disowned in this case did not mean full excommunication. He was still able to go to Sunday congregations and meetings to kind of see the errors in his ways. He did not, unfortunately, but he was unable to hold any kind of leadership roles. So the house itself, the initial structure, was built in 1822 and really showcases that move into the middle class having more money for themselves. This room would have been the dining room / multi-purpose room for the Palmers. Dining room is actually a more modern term. Back then, you would need extra space to really hold multiple different functions. Of course, they would have had a central dining room table here and some chairs, but it would have been more collapsible furniture. This room we call the hearth room, kind of for obvious reasons. The fireplace that we see here is a lot different from the other fireplaces that we see throughout the rest of the house. This one is a little bit simpler. There isn't any ornate mantle over it, and it's a lot larger. Now, having a detached kitchen for this time period, even by just a few feet, would drastically decrease the chance of a fire to the rest of your home. The parlor could have been your living room, could have been just a sitting area. It's really where most of the action happens in your old historic home. This is also part of the original structure of Woodlawn Manor. This was 1 room deep on this side of the home. So just the entirety of this room that we're in here was the only bit of living space that you had for this room on this first floor. This room we call it the back parlor. This was added as an extension from that front parlor about 10 to 20 years after the original structure was built. Where else in the county can you get a almost near perfectly preserved 19th century manor house that has enslaved connections to it, that has such an internal struggle of the Quakers who did not believe in slavery versus the enslaved people who were here and still wanting to continue to own enslaved people that were here? There's a lot of different dynamics of Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park.